Good morning, members. Good afternoon. Right. Just kidding. Good afternoon, members. It's February 14th. Quorum is present, and the Minnesota Senate Education Policy Committee will now come to order. Today, we're hearing Senate File 3534. I just want to welcome some new people to the committee since last time we met. Dana has begrudgingly decided to come back for one more session, so I just want to welcome her back. My new CLA, Chelsea, we're going to miss Reagan a great deal. Chelsea will fill her shoes. I want to also welcome the Pages, wherever they are right now, Spencer Olson, Luke Seck, and John Bridges. I want to thank all members of the critical staff that gets the work done behind the scenes that never get acknowledged for their hard work. And again, senators on the committee, I appreciate all the work and time you put into education. And so with that said, Senator Kunish, would you care to make a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I so move that, Senate File 3534 for consideration.
Thank you. Senator Westlin?
I don't know how you could miss me in this room.
Well, yeah. Very festive. When you're ready.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, Chair Swedzinski and members. I make note of my red suit. I know everyone has sort of assumed I'm wearing it for Valentine's Day today, but I did want to acknowledge that today is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Remembrance Day, and so I did wear this suit in remembrance of those we have lost. It is also Valentine's Day, and it just happenstance that I'm wearing red. I do want to thank you today for this hearing on this very important bill on our school resource officers and for providing the opportunity for members of the public to participate in this discussion. As a threshold matter, Representative Frazier, our House author, and I have been clear that our guiding North Star on this first priority and our first priority throughout our many meetings and conversations on this topic has been our children. Our work has been centered on the foundational belief that our schools are institutions of learning and our expectation that all adults working in our schools should be there and are there to provide a safe and supportive learning environment for every student. That every person should be part of a team that supports the shared objective of teaching our kids and helping them on their road to becoming. And we have been clear also about the social context within which this conversation arose and in which it continues. The work to ban chokeholds and comprehensive restraints over the past few legislative sessions has been in response to the murder of our neighbor, George Floyd, and our commitment to making sure that tragedy never occurs again. And the legislature passed a ban on the use of dangerous chokeholds and compressive restraints that impede the ability for individuals to breathe or communicate distress. And I want to stress this, that has not changed. That ban remains in place. In this process, we have reviewed existing SRO contracts, some of which required SRO training and many that did not. Most contracts outline duties that are consistent with what we have included in this bill. We have dedicated more than 60+ hours meeting with and listening to stakeholder groups, including community groups, education management organizations, Education Minnesota, law enforcement, the Attorney General's office. We have had input from representatives of the administration, including the Department of Education and the Department of Public Safety, and we have listened carefully to everyone. As we worked on drafting this bill, we included many things that were proposed by stakeholders. And as with all compromises and all negotiations, nobody got everything that they wanted. Representative Frazier and I, with input also from our House and Senate colleagues, have worked hard to come up with a comprehensive approach to school resource officers that we believe brings not only clarity, but uniformity around the definition and the duties of an SRO, the training requirements that they should have before working in our schools, and ultimately a post-board model policy that will set the standard for accountability going forward. Next, and I want to stress this as well, the ultimate decision about whether or not a community wishes to engage SROs to work in their schools is a local decision. And we encourage every district to engage students and parents and community members in full and thoughtful discussions on this topic, ensuring that all voices are heard. As it stands now, there are approximately 300 SROs in our state, and the majority of schools do not have SROs for any number of reasons. This will continue to be a matter of local control. However, when a district and a community determine that they would like to engage SROs in their schools, this should not be a matter simply left to individual contracts between law enforcement agencies and school districts as it is currently. There should be minimum standards and there should be minimum requirements that are uniform throughout our state. We have used this opportunity to build on the organizational structure of SROs to require specific responsibilities and policies that must be a component of SRO contracts going forward, and provide the resources to adequately train SROs. This bill requires a new post-board model policy that must specifically identify strategies to minimize the use and the duration of any prone restraint by SROs, that imposes a duty for SROs to render care, and requires alternative procedures to de-escalate conflicts. This legislation explicitly prohibits SROs from the administration of student discipline, which is common in all of the contracts that we reviewed. It requires SROs to help promote a positive school climate, also a common component to the contracts we reviewed. And it requires further stakeholder engagement in the development of the SRO model policy, including and especially input from community and youth groups and the Minnesota Council on Disability. The training will emphasize juvenile brain development, de-escalation techniques, and skill building, the impact of childhood trauma on our kids, how to respond to students experiencing a mental health crisis, and how to understand and work with students with disabilities and students receiving educational support services. I am convinced, as I hope you will be, that each of these components, the required duties and responsibilities of SROs, the model policy, the training requirements, will not only provide clarity, but a child-focused and a child-centered approach to the role of SROs within our schools and promote a positive learning environment for all students. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Ms. Lewis, would you be willing to take us on a walkthrough? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members, if you pull out the bill language, I'll just do a brief walkthrough. On page 1, section 1 is a definition section, and it provides a definition to clarify that a school resource officer is not an employee or agent of a district. Then on section 2, which is then on page 2, strikes references to school resource officers or security personnel from the use of, or prohibition of the use of pro-restraints in certain physical holds. Section 3 is the reasonable force standard that is applicable in schools, and it strikes the word imminent from the standard that applies to teachers or school principals in exercising their lawful authority. Then page 3, section 4 is, again, the definition, and that a school resource officer is not a school employee or agent of the district. Section 5 is for school districts when they're, or school boards when they're contracting for services. It requires them to ensure that the school resource officer contract meet the requirements that are contained in this legislation. Section 6 is the same requirement of a school board that goes towards a charter school board if they are hiring a school resource officer. Section 7, is the beginning of sections that are not a part of the Education Policy Committee's jurisdiction, but they relate to, the first one relates to when reasonable force is authorized, and there are provisions that that apply to teachers and school principals and other agents of the districts, which you'll find those changes are really clarifications on page 4. Then section 8 is the standard for reasonable force, and adds a paragraph on page 5 that states that nothing in this section will limit the other authorizations of reasonable force, including those that are in the education code, as well as in section 7 of this legislation. Then section 9 is the beginning of the requirements and for school resource officers, as well as their training, and then a model policy that is developed by the post board, and who is consulted in developing that policy. And then section 10, which is on the bottom of page 8, is the appropriation to the Department of Public Safety.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. We have a number of testifiers today. I appreciate all of you coming in and taking time out of your busy lives. We all appreciate it. Before we begin that testimony, I just remind the members that are testifying, the audience members that are testifying, limit your remarks to 2 minutes. We have a buzzer beeper bell going off at 2, and then at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, another one's going off. So try to adhere to that 2 minutes to 2 minute 30 seconds if possible. And so with that, would you please come up when your name's called? And I'll call 2 names at a time so we can be as efficient as possible. So, well, no, we'll have commissioners one at a time. So Commissioner Jacobson from Public Safety.
Mr. Chair, I understand the need for time limits, but I think the 2 commissioners could maybe get 2.5 minutes each. Thank you.
I should have, yes. And maybe we'll extend the commissioner's remarks. Senator Abler, I appreciate that feedback. And you are right. I'll say that once this year.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, can you identify yourself for the record? Thank you.
Sorry. Bob Jacobson, Commissioner of Public Safety, and again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I've been asked to testify on the school resource officer bill, and first of all, I want to thank the chair and the bill authors for the work that they have done. As I told others, this has been a difficult process to get to the point that we're at now. I also have shared with other committees that my father was an educator, 34 years, 17 years as a high school principal, 17 years as a school superintendent. I grew up in a household that was led by an educator, and learned a great deal from him and the approach to students and how to work on school safety. I also have a history in law enforcement, 33 years, spent time in the Department of Human Services, that included working with children in the system. And I also supervised school resource officers during my time in the city of New Brighton as the public safety director. School resource officers became president in the Mounds View School District starting in 1992 and supervised them until I left in 2016. So I've got experience in those areas. I do want to say that first of all, I support this bill. I believe that SROs are valuable members of our school communities. They forge positive relationships with students and adults in our school buildings. Based on the results of the 2022 student survey, the vast majority of students think it's a good idea to have an SRO in the school, and will talk to an SRO about something illegal or unsafe. An SRO is yet another responsible adult within a school. The SRO bill in front of the committee today represents a comprehensive proposal. Creates clear duties for SROs in schools. It provides training requirements that are focused on school settings and working with students, and free training options for law enforcement for this training. It requires a post-board model policy that will incorporate broad input from Minnesotans, including those working in education, law enforcement, and community groups. This policy will cover a lot of topics, but the one that I do believe is the most important and focusing on building constructive relationships between SROs, students, and educators. This bill also makes it clear that SROs are not allowed to be involved in school discipline. This has been a best practice and included in training for many years. Putting this into law makes that very clear. And if a community so chooses to have an SRO, this bill will help ensure a higher standard and specialized training. And in closing, every child, I believe, deserves a learning environment that's safe, supportive, and healthy, and I believe this bill will help accomplish that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Both commissioners have agreed graciously to stick around, so if you have any questions for them, members, they'll be here after the testimonies. Commissioner Jett.
Mr. Chair, members, good afternoon. My name is Willie Jett, Commissioner of Education. Thank you for the opportunity to provide thoughts on this bill. Before we begin, I want to express my gratitude to the individuals and the organizations who provided thoughtful input into this proposal over the last months. I also want to thank the authors, legislators, and members of the administration for their collaborative work. While our perspectives on this bill may vary, I appreciate our common focus and commitment to prioritize the health, safety, and well-being of our students and school communities. As some of you know, I spent many years serving as a school and district administrator. Part of our work as school administrators is to ensure the safety of our school environments, including de-escalating situations. However, we occasionally require assistance from our law enforcement partners, specifically school resource officers, if there are significant safety concerns. SRO programs, when done well, are rooted in the relationships that prioritize the health, safety, and support of young people. This bill ensures that all SROs throughout the state have this training. SROs are viewed as essential to maintaining safe and secure learning environments, and the data from the 2022 Minnesota Student Survey tells us, as Commissioner Jacobson said, an overwhelmingly majority of students from all demographic areas value the SROs in their schools. For 9 years, I served as the superintendent in the St. Cloud area schools. We spent those years in partnership with our local police departments to co-create the roles, responsibilities, and guardrails for our school resource officers. Together, we prioritize safety, which stems from relationship and connection. We focused on clarity and consistency of roles, including restorative practices and community-based, non-punitive supports and responses. I think it's important to note that we are saying clearly for the first time that SROs cannot engage in student discipline or the enforcement of school rules. I believe we all recognize that SROs in schools can be a complicated conversation that requires honest and careful consideration. And it's essential that we provide clarity through this bill to ensure the health and safety of our school communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Oh, Eric Misselt. You can mispronounce my name if you'd like.
That was perfectly pronounced. My name is Eric Misselt. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Peace Officer Standards and Training Board, who is mentioned in this bill a couple of times. Here today to just give you a little bit of background, since typically we do not come in front of the Education Committee in either House or Senate, regarding who we are, what we do. We are a regulatory and licensing board for all peace officers in the state of Minnesota. So we promulgate the training requirements for pre-service education, including certification of schools, continuing education, which is, of course, part of this particular bill, and then also regulating violation standards of conduct and misconduct in terms of licensure issues. So in the case of this bill, we have two tasks that are set for us, as you know, and I'll just comment briefly on those. With regard to the establishment of the learning objectives, and by the way, let me back up. Both of these things are things that we have been tasked to do for a number of, on a number of bills over time. So this is not new to us. In the case of the education requirements, or the better stated learning objectives, we would work with the School Safety Center to develop those and then promulgate those out for the training course as described in the statute. And then with regard to policy, again, something that we have done on a regular basis is in our wheelhouse. We will work with the groups identified in the bill to create this model policy. I will add a little to that, and based on the questions that have come up during the House hearings on this, and that is to say that when the statute says to, I believe it's collaborate or consult with, in our world, what that means is that we will bring the various groups together. We will facilitate meeting face-to-face. And working out, having multiple meetings to work out the details of that policy. There was a question about that because it's not technically described how we go about that, but I'm just letting you know that's how we would anticipate tackling this. And then secondly, I want to be clear that with regard to promulgating policy, policy never overrides statute. So we will work on the policy with the interest groups on all sides to put the policy together as described in statute. But of course, we cannot trump what statute says. So when issues like prone restraint come up and whatnot, we will follow the statute in building the policy. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you stick around as well, Director?
I will do that.
Thank you. And now with Senator Abler's request, that was the last of the no time limit testifiers. Maren Christensen and Taylor O'Shea are going to be the next two speakers. Okay, we'll wait for the virtual. So Maren Christensen, thank you. Identify yourself for the record.
Thank you so much, Senator Wadzinski and committee members. My name is Maren Christensen Hofer. I'm a parent of a child with a disability, and I'm also the executive director for a nonprofit organization called the Multicultural Autism Action Network, which serves children with disabilities in our multicultural communities. And I'm here for one reason today, and really one reason only, and that is that 79 children have died as a result of restraint-related fatalities, and 38 of those were specifically related to prone restraint. I want to be very clear that we do not believe that any child, under any circumstances, should ever be subjected to any form of physical holding that restricts or impairs a pupil's ability to breathe, restricts or impairs a pupil's ability to communicate distress, places pressure or weight on a pupil's head, neck, throat, chest, lungs, sternum, diaphragm, back, or abdomen, or results in straddling a pupil's torso. The language, as it's currently written, creates an exception for law enforcement. It pulls law enforcement out of that requirement, and it does not add it back in on the back end of the proposed law. I know you to be a group of people that care deeply about children, and I do not think that this is a referendum on whether we should have SROs in schools, but the language as currently written does not put our children first. What this bill says to me is that we're putting the wants of law enforcement over the needs of our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your efficiency. So we have testifiers online. And are they waiting to be introduced? Okay.
Hello, Chair Swedzinski and members of the Education Policy Committee. My name is Taylor O'Shea, a member of the Minnesota Youth Council, a 36-member council of young people representing the 8 congressional districts in Minnesota. Empowered with the crucial task of amplifying the voices of youth across Minnesota, we approach our duties with full commitment and sincerity. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony. My name is Taylor O'Shea. I am a junior at Deer River High School. I currently serve on the Minnesota Youth Council, representing Congressional District 8 and member of the Juvenile Justice Committee. My personal experience with SROs has been little to none.
Oh,
This is because
Ms. O'Shea, can you just pause for a sec? Can we get her
Yep.
picture on the screen? We'd like to see your face, so. But we'll wait maybe 5, 10, 15 seconds, and if we can't pull it up, then we'll continue with your testimony.
Okay,
Thanks for your patience.
yep.
Magic. Ms. O'Shea, we're going to start the timer again. If you want to start your testimony and introduce yourself for the record, we'd appreciate it.
Okay. My name is Taylor O'Shea. I am a junior at Deer River High School, and I currently serve on the Minnesota Youth Council representing Congressional District 8 and member of the Juvenile Justice Committee. My personal experience with SROs has been little to none. This is because the SRO at my school fails to form relationships with students and does not promote open communication. If this bill passes, we need to hold the SROs accountable for completing their duties and doing them in a way that is consistent. In order for this bill to pass, it should expand on the section on accountability. Similar to Section 3, Paragraph E, there should be an annual report about how well an SRO is performing their duties. This could be done by collecting data from students via survey on how they feel about the presence and impact the SRO has on their school/district. This would hold SROs accountable and ensure the safety of students. This would also increase student voice in the SRO discussion. Student voice within the SRO discussion is arguably the most important voice, and to see in Section 9, Subdivision 5 of this new bill that it has been implemented is very enlightening. Overall, I urge the committee to preserve these changes in the bill and even expand on them, because this is what young people, the future, need. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience as we got that right. Mary Jane
Itete.
Itete.
Yeah.
Begin when you're ready, when we can see your face. They're perfect. And make sure you identify yourself for the record. Thank you.
Hello, Chair Swedzinski and the members of the Education Policy Committee. For the record, my name is Mary Janie Tate, a member of the Minnesota Youth Council, 36-member council of young people representing the 8 congressional districts in Minnesota. We're empowered with the crucial task of amplifying the voices of youth across Minnesota as we approach our duties with full commitment and sincerity. That being said, I'm excited that the topic of school resource officers is being discussed through this bill, as well as the addition of the key elements that will ensure students of all different backgrounds will be protected. In my testimony, I will address the importance of amplifying youth voices and the need for the implementation of accountability checkups within the process of this legislation. Firstly, I would like to thank the Chair and the Education Policy Committee for allowing me this opportunity to share my voice and experiences through this testimony. I'm a senior at the Park Center Senior High School. We are on the border of Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center, and as previously stated, I serve on the Minnesota Youth Council as chair of the Congressional District 3 and member of the Juvenile Justice Committee. But as of right now, the most important part of my identity is the fact that I'm a student of color who simply wants to feel safe in school. Coming from an area that is predominantly BIPOC, I know firsthand how damaging the lack of trust between communities such as mine and the structure of police can be. And sticking peace officers without the proper legislation and the one place children are supposed to spend upwards to 18 years of their life in is simply not a plausible idea, which is why I'm nearly ecstatic that there is a consideration for youth voices to be heard regarding this topic. We are allowed to share our voices in writing and take time out of school and extracurricular activities to ensure our communities are being protected, so why not allow us to have a say in the very bill that may affect us the most? I believe the addition of a clause or line that advises districts to have a youth advisory board on the topic of SROs would be very beneficial. Because if SROs are not living up to their purpose in a particular district, overall prove to not be only non-beneficial but harmful, there needs to be next steps for the SRO themselves and the district. This could look like an addition of a clause that specifically highlights that SROs are required to be held accountable for any and all of their actions, depending on various situations. With a topic such as SROs, there needs to be care for every aspect that goes into a bill such as this for the physical, mental, and emotional safety of Minnesotan children and young adults. This is not and cannot be a one and done situation. There must be follow-up, there must be research, and most importantly, there must be feedback that is listened to and implemented. Overall, I urge this committee to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you both students for taking time out of your class schedule to testify today. Next up, Ed Allies, Matt Shaver. And Mr. Shaver, make sure you identify your, yeah, you got it. And make sure everybody signs in.
Chair Swedzinski, members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Matt Shaver, Policy Director at Ed Allies. We're members of the Solutions Not Suspensions Coalition. I'm here today to testify in opposition to Senate File 3534. Prone kills kids. We are advocates for kids, and Prone kills kids. This isn't about whether SROs belong in schools. It's about whether the state of Minnesota believes holds that kill children belong in schools, a place they are required by law to be. Everyone has a child in their life. There are parents, uncles, aunts, grandparents, coaches, mentors in this room. Picture your child. When should they lose their right to bodily autonomy in our public schools? When should the math teacher be able to hold your child in a way that restricts or impairs their ability to breathe? When should the bus driver be able to put weight on your child's head while they are laying flat on the floor? When should a principal be able to put pressure on your child's chest? When should a security guard be able to straddle your child's torso? And when should a school resource officer be able to hold your child in a way that makes it impossible for your child to call out for help? Those are the stakes. Those are the policies we're here to talk about and that need thorough vetting. My guess is if you were picturing your own child, you would want this to be done to them rarely, if ever. And it had better be a situation that was so dangerous, this was the only way to intervene. This standard, that adults do not need to put a child on the ground in a way that could kill them in nonviolent situations in schools, is the policy the legislature and governor signed into law last spring that we are here to defend. It is that simple. The chokehold ban in 60906 is not equivalent to the prone restraint ban in 121A. 60906 simply does not provide as much protection for children as what is currently in law in 121A. The clarity everyone is seeking here would mean explicitly detailing when SROs can and cannot put children into dangerous holds, putting that into statute. Our coalition does support the concept of the model policy. We can and should pass pages 3 through 8 of this bill without needing to pass pages 1 and 2. There will be a 2-year gap between passage of this bill and the adoption of the model policy. What will we tell our children in the meantime? Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Shaver. Terry Morrow.
Good afternoon, Chair Swedzinski, committee members. I am Terry Morrow, the Minnesota School Board Association's Director of Legal Policy Services. MSBA is grateful to you, Senator Westlin, for your role in leading timely, productive, and collaborative conversations about this bill. It was an effort that all the education organizations appreciated. Now, while this bill is referred to as the SRO bill, I am limiting my comments to the ability of a school employee to take action to stop damage to school property. For Minnesota school districts, student safety is, as everyone is saying, a fundamental priority. And please, I want to be really clear. No school employee should use prone restraints or holds that might restrict a student's breathing or communication of distress in order to protect school property. In 2023, though, changes to the Education Code and to the Criminal Code regarding school employees' use of reasonable force resulted in inconsistencies, which this bill does address. Thus, I want to focus simply on one matter and one word. On line 5.4 in Section 8 of this bill, the word property is removed from the Criminal Code definition of reasonable force that teachers, principals, and other school employees can exercise. Thus, I simply seek to confirm our conversations with the bill's authors and legislative leaders that under this bill and existing Minnesota law, school employees can physically intervene reasonably, responsibly, rarely, and as a last resort to stop damage to school property. And finally, I will note that we do share the comments that Roger Aronson will be sharing with you as well. For the sake of time, I won't repeat them here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Aaron Sandsmark. Welcome to the committee.
Hello. Hello, Chair Kwasinski and committee members. My name is Erin Sandsmark. I'm the Coalition Programs Manager for Solutions Not Suspensions. SNS is a coalition of students, families, community members, and organizations committed to changing policies, practices, and mindsets in order to end racial disparities in discipline and foster positive school climates for all students. That is our mission, and that is why I'm here before you today. I believe that SF 3534 will undo important wins and protections that were gained in the 2023 legislative session. I am deeply disappointed that the bill before us today will grant the ability to SROs and other contracted officers to use error-restrictive holds on students in schools, like prone restraints. We keep hearing to not worry and that enough protections are in 60906. We very much disagree. 60906 is about chokeholds, and we are talking about prone restraints. These are two different things. A prone restraint with a body on the ground being held down by adults is a traumatic hold, both psychologically and physically, We have a student in our coalition that has experienced this hold firsthand when he was only in 5th grade. When he spoke about his experience in a recent House hearing, it felt as if his story was largely ignored. It is not the fault of our students that these incidents have gone unreported. It has been a failure of the state until last spring when it became required to report such incidents. We must fix this bill proposed in front of us today and protect our children from dangerous restraints by all adults. Sure, let's clarify the law, but that does not mean we have to play political games by taking out protections for our kids. Our students deserve more. We know that these prone and air restrictive holds are more likely to be used on Black, Brown, Indigenous, and disabled youth. We have to consider the implications of allowing these restraints by SROs. All adults should be held to a high standard. SROs chose to leave school buildings this year, but the bill that was passed did not kick them out. It was merely trying to hold officers accountable. I urge you to reconsider the use of prone restraints. We must consider the needs of our children before the wants of our police. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Webster, next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jessica Webster. I'm a staff attorney with Legal Aid, also representing the Disability Law Center. And with respect to Senator Westlin and Representative Frazier for all the hard work they've put into this bill, we are strongly, strongly opposed to Senate File 3534 as written. We believe the spirit and intent of last year's legislation was to ban prone restraint and breath-impacting holds on children in our schools unless there was a risk of bodily harm or death. Legal Aid and the Disability Law Center absolutely support that intention because we've represented kids who have been hurt in prone holds and physical holds. This is a prone restraint. If you can't see this image, I have images here that I can share out. It's allegedly the illustration of a proper prone restraint where a child is held down and their arms and legs are pinned. And this is not banned by Minnesota law in 60906 because the adults are not using a compressive chokehold. But this so-called proper prone restraint is inhumane, it's traumatic, it's incredibly dangerous for children because when the child fights or resists, the risk of positional asphyxiation increases. Legal Aid acknowledges there have now been 2 AG opinions and a slightly different opinion from the Hennepin County attorney. We absolutely support your ability to clarify the law this session and clear up confusion about what is allowed and what the duties of officers are. But please don't remove the ban on prone restraint in our schools unless deadly force is authorized. And please don't tell us everything is okay because 60906 bans chokeholds. These are not chokeholds. This is not banned. This is what our children will be subject to if you codify the AG's opinion and don't clarify and use the legislature's power to clarify this session. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Mr. Aronson, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I'm Roger Aronson. I represent the elementary and secondary school principal associations. Just for the committee, we have 2,200 members of the 2 associations throughout Minnesota, and we've tracked this legislation and the changes that happened last year quite closely. I really want to say that I think all of the introductory comments that the senator made regarding the bill we would join in. I think the sentiments that she expressed are absolutely the appropriate sentiments, and they're the thoughts that ought to carry this committee as you make the decisions as to what you want to do. I want to say on the outset that for school teachers and principals, we have never had the authority to do anything other than what is reasonable. The standard has always been reasonable force. This bill underscores the intersection of 3 pieces that are very important to teachers and principals. This bill intersects the criminal code in 609. It intersects the maltreatment of minors statute and then the reasonable force statutes. We support this bill. There's a good change in here where the word imminent is deleted for the use of force. That makes it quite a bit easier for teachers and principals to make decisions that happen in seconds. There are things that we would like to see in the bill. We had very many discussions about this, and we appreciate the discussions among the stakeholders. We didn't get everything that we wanted in the bill. Other people didn't get everything that they wanted in the bill. Mr. Chair, you're pretty familiar with that. That's the way this place works. And so we would say that we strongly support this bill, and we deeply appreciate the senator's efforts. This is not an easy bill to carry by any sense of the imagination. It takes a lot of courage to do it, and we really appreciate it. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Thank you, Mr. Aronson.
Thank you. I did sign, yeah.
One last testifier, Ryan Bowers. And identify yourself for the record, Mr. Bowers.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, and it's Bovers, but I appreciate it. My name is Ryan Bovers. I am a licensed social worker in the state of Minnesota. I will soon be a lawyer, and I've been working with children for over 10 years, and I am here to provide testimony in opposition to this bill. I will refer the members to my written testimony for the majority of my opposition, but by way of expressing my personal experience in implementing physical restraint, I would like to respond to some of the author's statements. But before that, would just say that while it is appreciated that SROs cannot be a part of school discipline, they of course can still be a part of criminal discipline. Your Honor, excuse me, Your Honor, Mr. Chair, in my experience in working in a locked residential facility, I was in physical restraints almost every day. It would not be an overestimation to say that I was in physical restraints over 100 times. I was not allowed to use prone restraint. I was only allowed to use restraints in response to imminent danger. Never did I feel it was necessary to put a child in prone restraint. Never did I wish I could respond sooner. These are common sense restrictions that have been implemented on school staff and school and mental health professionals for decades. My father had to follow these restrictions. This is not unclear. And prone restraints themselves, by definition, are restrictive on the air and breathing of a child. And before I conclude, members, I would just like to speak a name that hangs over this hearing for me personally, and I believe for some of the members of the public as well, and that is Cornelius Frederick, a young man who was killed in restraint in Michigan not too long ago. And I'd like to tell you a bit about him, other than the fact that he died. When he was 12 years old, he found his mother dead in his bed. His father was incarcerated and lost custody. He ended up in the foster care system at 12 years old, which is a time at which it is very difficult to exit the foster care system before you turn 18. He was separated from his siblings. The aggression and intimidation that he exhibited was likely a front for the pain and sorrow within. I provide this picture to you not because I want to shame people, but because I want you to know who the child who is laying on the ground is, and that they are our children as well. If it takes a village to raise a child, it also takes a village to break them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all the testifiers. Members, any questions for anybody or any amendments you'd like to bring forward? Senator Duckworth.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I would like to offer the A10 amendment, please.
And you're going to explain the amendment, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, whenever you would like me to.
As soon as we get a copy of it, that'd be great.
If you'd like, Mr. Chair, I can kind of explain it?
I sent, as soon as Senator Westlin gets a copy, if you can wait for her.
Very good.
Do all the members have a copy? No. Okay, just bear with us, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. And I would also like to request a roll call when the time comes to vote. First and foremost, Senator Westlin, it's good to see you. I appreciate you bringing this bill forward. I mean that very genuinely and sincerely. It seems like forever ago in July when you and I had a phone conversation when this issue first came up. And I very much appreciated you reaching out to me saying, you keep talking about a potential way to address this issue. What do you have? Could you send it to me? And I want everybody to know that's a display of bipartisan collaboration that is extremely important in the legislature. And so I sent that to Senator Westlin. I sent it to then at the time Leader Carrie Dietzick so that we could begin the process of working together and collaborating on a fix. And so I appreciate everybody who's been a part of that process. And I think the public should know Republicans and Democrats are trying to work on this together to fix it. The amendment I offer is simply a repealer. It deletes the bill that's before us and instead says, let's just repeal the law that was passed last year that has put us all in the position that we're in currently. I think legislators on both sides of the aisle nowadays have admitted to the fact that there is a lack of clarity in the law that was passed last year that they would like to have clarified. They'd like to bring some certainty there. I think a vast majority of people throughout this conversation have been shown to agree that school resource officers in school are a good thing. They keep kids, teachers, and our schools safe. The bill that passed last year led to school resource officers being pulled out of some school buildings or changing their response procedures in a way that greatly reduced their response times compared to when they were actually in the buildings. And many folks have said that was not the intent of the law. Nevertheless, that has been what's occurred. And so a quick and easy way to fix that would be to simply repeal the law that was passed last year that put us in this position. We can essentially reset to where we were before this was an issue and continue our conversations and consideration of student and school safety legislative fixes or bills moving forward. That's all I've got, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Senator Westlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Siri always thinks I'm talking to her when I'm not, so please excuse my AI thing. I oppose this. I think that should come as no surprise. I think what we are trying to do today with the bill that I have brought forth in the Senate and the bill that has been brought forth by Representative Frazier in the House is really to build on our work from last year. This completely undoes it. And what we know, based on testimony earlier from Commissioner Jacobson, we know that SROs have been in our schools for a very, very, very long time. And I was surprised last fall to find out we actually didn't have any kind of policies or training requirements. This was all a matter of contract between districts. There was no uniformity from one school district to the next. And instead of going back to what I would describe as being sort of the Wild West, and things may vary from one district to the next, I think what is important is that we have consistency, that we have uniformity, and again, based on the many conversations that we have had with many stakeholders on this issue, I think everybody agrees that consistency and uniformity is important. This would completely undo not only the intentions and the purposes of the bill that is before you today, but it will completely undo what happened last year. And I do not agree with this amendment, and I will encourage members to vote no.
Any other members care to weigh in? Did you Senator, did you request a roll call vote for your amendment or the final bill?
For the amendment, Mr. Chair, I'll request it on the final bill as well.
Okay, you're consistent. A roll call's been requested, roll call granted.
Chair Swedzinski,
No.
Vice Chair Makewaid,
No.
Senator Coleman,
Aye.
Senator Abler,
Aye.
Senator Bolden,
No.
Senator Duckworth,
Yes.
Senator Hofschild, Senator Kunish,
No.
Senator Mann,
No.
Senator Wiesenberg.
Yes.
The final vote is 6 noes and 4 yeses, so the amendment fails. Senator Abler.
Well, thank you, and I do appreciate the discussion. I appreciate every testifier, and I attempt to learn from everybody, and I've learned quite a bit about this since it first came on. I voted yes on the last amendment because, at least in the experience that I understand, it's not a problem in Minnesota. There are stories that are horrible elsewhere and perhaps a few cases of inappropriate use. But if you look at where we have gotten to in our schools, I'm kind of glad my kids are grown. I have grandkids, though. And there are many kids who feel unsafe in school. Why? Because they feel unsafe? No, because they are. We're not talking about weapons. We're talking about fists. We're talking about things that get thrown around. We're talking about bullying, intimidation for any amount of reasons. And talking to my local law enforcement and to my local administrators, the SROs have been amazing for bringing some kids on board, helping them stick with the plan, helping them graduate, helping them be supported. And I'm sorry for the experience of the one individual up north who didn't have a good experience, but the testimonies are overwhelming that these officers are really an asset. And for reasons that have been discussed greatly, Anoka withdrew its police from the schools because they felt they had no choice and to put their officers in peril for some kind of lawsuit and for some kind of personal damage for doing what they thought was truly the best. Speaking to some of my SROs, one was the SRO for quite some time. 2 times in his whole career he used any force whatsoever, never prone restraints. It's not even on their list of choices that make any sense. But there are people throwing desks, throwing stuff around, and so somehow I had a feeling I knew how that last amendment would go, but I don't think there's a problem that we're fixing, at least in most of the world. My son is a deputy sheriff, and he talks about his view of law enforcement, and these folks don't go out looking to see who they can imperil. They'll go out seeing who they can help by putting their own life on the line. And if you think that's nothing, then just ask them all to stop. And if you think it's nothing when someone calls because there's an activity going on in the neighborhood they're afraid of, or someone who's, putting your family at risk, and nobody comes, with these that's really too bad. Minneapolis has half their complement of officers, just in the whole theme of what people think they're doing, and it's not true. There are exceptions to every profession, and the post, whatever. It's their job to keep track of that. And if there's a law enforcement officer who doesn't belong there, then they should be out. But I can tell you that most of them would die to protect you. And they would die to protect the kids, and they would die to protect the teachers. They would, I'm just astonished as I see. how that's going to go. And they don't want to lose their house, they don't want to lose their livelihood. So, Mr. Chair, with that being said, I move the A2 amendment.
The A2 amendment, Senator Abler, is, if you'd explain it as soon as we get a copy. And Senator Westlin gets a copy as well.
So, Mr. Chair, I can just comment a little bit more without the amendment, just to get 30 more seconds of commentary in my list there. So, but I want to encourage the people that are watching
Senator,
this.
just wait till Senator Westlin gets a copy.
I wasn't talking about the amendment.
Oh,
I was
okay.
still rhetoricizing.
Thank you.
That'll help move things along.
Your Honor.
I have more than once referred to Senator Champion as Your Honor instead of Mr. President.
Yeah.
Okay, Senator Abler, if
All right.
you don't mind
So
explaining
anyways,
your bill.
but I want to just, in my finishing my comments, I want to encourage the individuals, students, advocates, parents, whoever, who feel that they're somehow not, that they're at risk or imperiled, that nobody wants that either. And there are parts of this bill that could work. And if we're going to have a bill, then it needs to be a bill that actually does its job. And what this does, the League of Cities agrees with me, the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, Metro Cities, Municipal Legislative Commission, and some other group I can't read because my glasses aren't good enough, and others agree that when you, this changes the shall to a may, basically, on page 5, line 21, and with some of the related words. And I think that it has to work. And so will the bill, so whatever people think and the fear they have, the question we still have to ask is, in fair collaboration with all the parties, will the piece of legislation we pass truly protect those who feel at risk, but also get all the SROs back? And so my interest here is to help the bill to work. And it's minor, it's not something I made up, I liked it to start with, but so this makes the agreement with the SRO more of a contractual situation where they discuss with the school what they, and their department, what they might be doing. And so there's a bunch of duties that this bill gives them that they shall do. They have to foster a positive school climate through relationship building and open communication. What if some parent didn't feel that that person fostered a relationship? It's a legal duty. Well, they failed. They could be sued. And they're going to I mean, it's an undefinable thing. They should certainly work on fostering that. They should certainly protect students. They should certainly serve as liaison. They certainly should provide advice. But maybe they're not really part of the safety drill team. Now they've violated the law. And so I think that the bulk of these duties would be appropriate and laid out in a school's policy, a district's policy. But I think this is a major concern of a lot of the folks who have concerns about the bill. This is maybe the singular biggest one. And so, and I'm sure it's not new to the author of the bill. And so I would actually hope that you could accept it as a friendly amendment.
Senator Westlin.
Mr. Chair, so just by way of process, there was an amendment provided to the House file of the bill in public safety yesterday, which I like considerably better and which I have consulted with my House partners on. We have had a lot of discussions about shall and may. And I will say first and foremost that many of the contracts that I've reviewed have the notion that an SRO should be fostering a positive school environment. It hasn't been a problem in the past with somebody saying you didn't comply with your legal contractual duty. The duties outlined in here are basically a job description. However, there has been language that has been added in the House that seems to be satisfactory to some of our stakeholders that raise the concern. I am asking members to oppose this language because this has been addressed in the House file And it actually is, I think, better language and addresses things in a more comprehensive way. I also just want to address a couple of your other comments, Senator Abler. I have deep respect for our law enforcement officers. I have a great relationship with the police departments in Plymouth and Maple Grove. I have a great relationship with Sheriff Witt. And I know that they all work very hard, and I understand that. And I appreciate that. I deeply appreciate the work that they do and that they put themselves on the line to keep communities safe. And it's not an either or, and it is important to understand that my experience with law enforcement and perhaps your experience with law enforcement may be vastly different than the experiences of some of our friends and neighbors. And I think that we can hold both of those things as true. And I think the intention of the model policy in particular is incredibly important, because each of the stakeholder groups that are coming to help develop those policies have a unique perspective. And it includes our law enforcement agencies, it includes MSBA, it includes the Council on Disability, it includes the Youth Council, members that we heard very, very clearly. And I think asking to have uniformity in the policy and having clarity in the policy developed in conjunction with people whose perspectives are different is incredibly important. And it does not, in my view, take away from the important role that law enforcement plays in our communities. And again, we need to understand that there are communities and individuals who have a different relationship and a different experience with law enforcement. Bringing them together to make policies gives everybody the opportunity to listen to each other, to understand, not rebut, and to really develop relationships that can only make things better. And I also believe that sometimes that means sitting with discomfort. And what happens in a lot of these conversations, things are brought forward, we feel our discomfort and we don't want to continue in the conversation. And above all else, this is beyond the scope of what we're talking about here, but I just want to say that these are important conversations that should continue, and I hope that that happens. The model policy piece is really important and really critical, but I believe the duties are also. And again, to reiterate, sorry, I'm a lawyer. We always use 10 words when we can use one, but there's something that was passed in the House Public Policy yesterday that actually is preferable language. It addresses some of these concerns in a very explicit way, and I would ask members to vote no on this amendment.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Abler.
Well, this is a real hearing. This is our real chance to do it. Is there a reason, Senator Westlin, you didn't bring that amendment forward that you like better so we can see where there's progress and movement? Because there are many people out there, groups and others, that they're nervous about it both ways. Mm-hmm. And just splitting it up so that both groups are unhappy isn't a good way to write something. So could you please describe for me what last night's amendment did?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Senator Abler, I think it's sitting on my desk. I have a manila folder and I have what I call my trial notebook. And I understand that this is a real hearing. I came prepared to have a real hearing today. I am also working in coordination with my House author. And these bills are traveling, and it's possible it may get through their process first. We are coordinating to make sure that any changes made in the bill in the House are acceptable to me, and that those are the things that will be presented to probably the Public Safety Committee, because to be honest with you, much of this bill actually falls under the authority there. I appreciate you're bringing this amendment, and again, I'm simply going to reiterate that I would ask members to oppose the amendment.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. And before I forget, I'd like to request a roll call on the vote. Senator Westlin, again, compliment you on working with your House counterpart to move a bill, get it before committees for hearings and discussion. And I want to I guess I want to be clear because I've been following the other House committee hearings as well. And it's my understanding that an amendment regarding the verbiage that has to do with may versus shall has actually not been amended onto the House bill yet. And I'm not trying to catch you off guard. To your point, we've got a lot of stuff going on. You're trying to track it and do your bill as well. I know there was an amendment to the bill yesterday evening, but I'm not sure it was that one. But to your point, I believe it's being discussed. I believe law enforcement and other folks are having conversations with bill authors, yourself and Representative Frazier, and others specific to the amendment that Senator Ayler brought forward. So if my understanding is incorrect, please let me know, but that's where I believe things currently stand.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Duckworth, the change was not shall to may. There was other explicit language, however, that clarified, and I think the concern that was being raised specifically by the League of Minnesota Cities was whether or not this created special duties or interfered with the standard duties that peace officers have, such as the caretaking function. The language added yesterday specifically and explicitly addressed those things. I know that I believe maintaining the word shall is important if we are trying to have uniformity and consistency across this. And there are other ways to address the concerns that have been raised, and I believe they have addressed those concerns. So anything that changes the shall to a may, from my perspective as a bill author, I don't agree with, but I do believe that those concerns raised by LMC have been addressed in an amendment to the House file that explicitly says this isn't creating special duties, and it does allow law enforcement to engage in caretaking and other functions they would have as a peace officer. Just for clarity, the caretaking function, for instance, is if a student is having a mental health crisis, the law enforcement officer can accompany that child, for instance, to a facility or hospital facility. That is just part of their role as a peace officer. And there was concern that somehow this language in this bill, which I disagree with, but somehow the language in the bill prevented them from carrying out those duties. Explicit language addressing those two things. And I believe that is a better way to address that shall versus may, because that's my understanding of what the problem was for some folks with shall versus may. So again, I just want to reiterate, I oppose the amendment. I'm asking members to vote no.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Chair, yeah.
Senator Abler.
And Senator Westlin, I didn't mean to be offensive when I suggest this is a real hearing, but what I have not seen in the last year, I don't remember any particular bill of yours that I'm going to be commenting on, is nothing changes. So some bills go through 9 committees and it's still kind of the same bill when it gets all done. And the advice of people, I won't even use the word minority, the advice of random human beings that don't know how to improve a bill is ignored because it's barely being written by the legislature. But nothing changes. Here's a hearing and there's a good amendment. I would just wish if you would have liked the amendment, we could have had that there so we could have seen the evolution. And so by that way, that bill didn't move out of committee, which is interesting. And I imagine this one will, I don't know. But as people watch our process, they want to see that there's listening going on and evidence of evolution. Talking to 2 individuals this morning, they represent some of the law enforcement groups who I am happy to stand with, not blindly, but I really appreciate what they do. They don't feel the least bit comfortable with whatever. And for them, this shell thing, it's not that they don't want to do any of those jobs. They don't want to get sued for not doing them. And the world has changed. And there's, lawyer jokes are always funny, I guess, but just because a person is aggrieved, then they're going to go after an individual and describe how they failed to accomplish this list. That's what they're worried about. They might even make a longer list when they have a contract with the individual, with the city. Maybe the Coon Rapids wants something and Chaska wants something else, and Duluth needs a different kind of thing that they could be flexible about. We are not that smart in St. Paul to create enumerated lists of all the things somebody is supposed to do. And the error I've seen in my time here is that there's this St. Paul amazingness, where we can introduce policy. I think some of the policies of last year's bill could have been a little more flexible to allow areas to deal with where they want, the school districts to handle what they want to with their own priorities. Anyway, so I'm going to ask you to vote yes, and I'm going to bring this to a vote, and just so you know that I'm still committed to making this work. It's not meant to be disrespectful to your dislike of the amendment, but at the end, you want to have a bill that works, that the parties come together on. This is, in terms of the concern about the individuals who are worried about abuse of this bill, this has nothing to do with them, with their fear. This has the ability, that has to do with the ability of the groups that have to implement this thing to do it. And so I would request that you please vote yes today, and if not, we'll think about it for another day. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, would you indulge me in just a brief response?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Senator Abler. Senator Westlin.
And I appreciate that, Senator Abler. I have always appreciated conversations with you in my short time here in the legislature. As we heard earlier from the executive director of the Post Board, they establish policies on a regular basis all the time in conjunction with people. And I think I love my staff. And I think that this is just a regular part of the process, and that's what we're asking them to do. This isn't unusual. Our peace officers are subject to, just as I am a lawyer, I'm subject to rules and policies and so forth, and we are allowing the Post Board, who has the expertise, we are allowing the DPS providing the training potentially through the School Resource Center. We are allowing the people with the expertise to do those things. It's simply important that that we move from a situation where there's literally no uniformity, there's no established rules, there's no expectations, that we move to a position where there actually are clear expectations, and our peace officers work to model policies all the time. That's what they do. And I have every confidence that the Post Board will engage in a thoughtful process with input from law enforcement officers, among others. So I'm sure we could go back and forth and back and forth. Maybe we can talk offline, but we've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. And we have had conversations with LMC and stakeholder groups, including law enforcement. And this has been a very deliberative process. I think we have well over 60 hours in conversations both with groups of stakeholders and individual stakeholders, really trying to understand what concerns were and adopt changes that we felt were consistent with the intention of this policy and this bill. We've adopted and attempted to work with every group to understand and implement where we can. So, again, I just want to say that there was an amendment passed that addresses the concerns.
Mr. Chair.
Final words of the author of the amendment.
That sounds so final, Mr. Chair. So, Your Honor, I just want to remind you, Senator Westlin, this is not about the policy manual. This is not about establishing, working with groups. This is about a list of stuff they have to do. And because it's on the list, the Post Board will require that they do these things. And so that's just different. And if Cokato doesn't want all this stuff, they don't have to ask for it. Just as you go forward, and I accept that you're not going to vote today, but I'm hoping for tomorrow.
Mr. Chair, I'm not on the committee, so I won't be voting for this in this committee.
Maybe I'll get your vote on a different committee. Thank you.
Roll call's been requested. Roll call granted.
Chair Swedzinski?
No.
Vice Chair Maquaid?
No.
Senator Coleman?
Aye.
Senator Abler?
Yes.
Senator Bolden?
No.
Senator Duckworth?
Yes.
Senator Hauschildt?
No.
Senator Kunish?
No.
Senator Mann?
No.
Senator Weisenberg.
Yes.
Six noes, 4 yeses, the amendment's defeated. Any other members' amendments? Senator Weisenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move forward with the A3 amendment. And to mirror some of what Senator Abler said, I think.
Senator, can you wait till Senator
yes, I'm
Westlin
sorry.
has a copy? Thank you, I appreciate that.
I promise I'll read fast.
Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to mirror a little bit of what Senator Abler said without repeating everything, in regards to law enforcement, I think they want what's best for everybody and they don't want to cause anyone harm. In this bill, some things seem clear as mud to me, I guess. I think there is a point that we come to, unfortunately, where someone may have to be restrained because of, physical harm or loss of life. I guess so. If I could I ask the author a question? Or, Mr. Chair?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at some point, God forbid it comes there, but if someone brandishes a weapon or a scissors or something, like to a teacher or a resource officer, another child, I mean, is there a point where we're going to allow them to protect their life and the life of other children in school?
Mr.
Senator
Chair and Senator, there's nothing currently that prevents them from doing that, so I guess I don't understand the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to me and teachers, because teachers fear that if they do anything, they're going to have some repercussion. And I know of a small stature teacher that was attacked with a scissors by a larger adult. I'll say adult, a male that's been through puberty, and they have to do what they have to do to protect themselves. And I think we have to make that clear that if your life is threatened, I just want to, so people know, teachers, anybody in a school, they don't want to do this, but if they have to do something to protect their lives, we need to make it clear to them that it's okay, right? So, thank you, Mr. Chair. And then I'll go forward with my amendment. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Senator Westlin, any?
So I've read the amendment, and there are some pieces, some of this is piecemeal, and this is addressed. I am unclear if what I have in my hand is what was actually passed yesterday in the House, to be honest with you. And again, I don't seem to have a copy of that amendment with me. But this information, again, to go back to what I was saying earlier, we have added in the House Public Safety Committee an amendment that addresses the fact that nothing in this bill prevents or impedes a peace officer from performing their usual duties. As you can imagine, again, we are trying to move this matter forward in a systematic way. It is passing forward in both houses. It may pass through the House before we get through all of our pieces. It is being amended in the House in consultation with me. And again, I would ask that this amendment, I would ask members to vote no. It is my understanding that this concern has been addressed in the House file.
Senator Weisenberg.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Weisenberg, for letting me jump in. We're trying to help you out. We're trying to bring about good faith, sincere bipartisan amendments and changes, and I understand the bill is dual tracking in the House, and they may have passed either the exact or similar amendments, and I don't mean to be critical, but I mean, we're not the House, we're the Senate for a reason. We're going to have discussions, and our amendments may differ. If at the end of the day, the bills are similar but slightly different, there's a process for that. They don't have to track identically through House and Senate committees. And I probably sound more critical and stern than I mean to. Senator Westlin, this is not directed at you. This is more so comments about the process. I want to vote yes on your bill. I really do, very badly. But it's going to be hard for me to do so, given the conversation so far, which is, yes, we intend to change, amend, or modify it. We just don't have the version the way we want it yet in the Senate. And that's why I think Senator Wiesenberg has brought about this amendment, because it gets to the conversation earlier about caretakers and police officers being able to do things in the normal course of their duty, like help a child in a situation in which they may need to. And so we can continue to advocate for voting no on good, well-meaning amendments that have either exactly or similarly been adopted in the House, or we can accept them, pass them, can continue to improve the bill, work it through the process, and ultimately vote on it and have a conference committee if we need to. So I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, but I just want to, for the good of the order, remind people that our bills do not have to be the same at this point. And quite frankly, the fact that they're not the same and we have these conversations and we make amendments usually means we end up with a better product in the long run. Thank you, Senator Wiesenberg, for letting me.
Mr. Chair, Senator Duckworth, I am very clear about the difference between the Senate and the House. I am very clear that we have our work to do and they have their work to do. No lack of clarity on my part about our roles. Again, I do like to work in collaboration, and this is a very important policy that we are putting forward. We have had numerous conversations with stakeholders. This is a delicate balance, and I want to make sure that as we are moving things forward, that they are being done in a way that I agree with first and foremost, and that reflect the conversations that we've had with individuals. I guess the other thing I would bring up, Mr. Chair, the amendments that are being brought forward at this point are actually not part of the jurisdiction of this committee. We are having a public safety committee hearing between now and then. Certainly you can have colleagues introduce these there, but I don't believe, I mean, we've entertained these amendments, and I think that's fine, but they do not fall under the jurisdiction of this committee. And I think that these would be better addressed in the Public Safety and Judiciary Committee. But again, I want to reiterate, my understanding of the language that is being added, and I did find my file, is that it literally addresses these concerns. It's been adopted into the House file. It is entirely possible the House file may pass through their process before ours. If that happens, I may determine that I want to take up the House file. So I understand the procedural arguments. I appreciate your feedback. This is moving forward in a way that I would like it to move forward, and it is done in a way that is in collaboration and conjunction with our stakeholders and also with my partner on the House. So again, I think before we get any more amendments on parts of the bill that are not under the jurisdiction of this committee, I guess I would just say we can have those hearings, but it would be better before the Public Safety and Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Senator. I would reiterate that as well. And I'm not sure if everybody's aware, but the Public Safety and Judiciary Committee is for the Senate's meeting on Monday. So if any of these amendments are you deem more appropriate for that committee's expertise and experience, that might be helpful for the whole process. And certainly, Commissioner, if you'd like to weigh in at some point on what committee you feel whatever amendment gets brought up might be better suited for, we'd appreciate your wisdom on that as well. Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think, Senator Westlin, what you just said was super helpful. I think when you keep referring to the House committees, it's because it's gone through two in the House, and we're on the first one. And so when you're talking about the House, you keep saying that, and I think you're talking about the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee, which has not happened here. Okay, that makes sense. Mr. Chair, it might be helpful if you could just tell us which sections of this bill before us are in the jurisdiction of the Education Committee, and which one would be in the Public Safety Judiciary? Or Anne Marie.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members, referring back then to the Senate File 3534, the sections that are amending the Education Code are Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, Section 4, Section 5 and Section 6.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move forward with the A3 amendment and call for a roll call. Thank you. And I feel discussions are important, so we need to move forward with this. Page 5, line 29, after laws, we just insert and execution of other duties imposed upon peace officers by law. So it says laws, and we're just defining that they're going to do their job. Thank you.
Senator Mann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this falls very much outside of this jurisdiction. So, for example, other duties imposed upon peace officers by law. Do we have a list of what that looks like? We haven't had any discussion as it pertains to this bill. We don't know what that means. I certainly don't. So for those reasons, I don't think that this amendment pertains to our jurisdiction, and I would recommend a no vote.
Senator McQuaid.
Ditto, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Mann.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Abler.
I don't know, I used to teach school, right? Did you teach government?
Was in a previous life.
Oh, yeah, I mean, because there's the House and there's the Senate. I mean, there's the other body, pardon me. I'm not supposed to say that word with the H in it. And this is a committee, and this is a big deal. This topic, I think, is germane. And I mean, it's a softball amendment, but we're here to work. And I think those of us in this committee appreciate the fact to do committee work in the committee. And as it expands a little bit beyond, you accepted my amendment in the same area. And so if it's a good amendment, Senator, please accept it. And then you can tweak it up with your counterpart across the street.
Mr. Chair, so we've had a few amendments. We've heard the amendments. I believe the amendments should be heard in the appropriate committee that has subject matter jurisdiction where the committee members are at least more familiar with the topic. Yes, we've heard some amendments. I have asked everyone to vote no. We voted no on them. I don't think we should continue to do work that should be done in the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. And for that reason alone, I don't, again, if there are other amendments coming forward that deal with the public safety part of this bill, I would ask the chair to rule that they are outside the jurisdiction of this committee, and we can certainly talk about those things on Monday in the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. I mean, Mr. Chair, it's before the committee. Go ahead and, it's your committee. We can certainly have a vote on it, but it's your committee, but I'm going to probably object to any further amendments and ask you to rule on that going forward and anything that does not deal with the jurisdiction of this committee.
Senator McQuaid, final comment. Senator Kunesh, final comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was basically going to say what Senator Westlin just said. If we start accepting any kind of amendments that are really under the jurisdiction of another committee, that's sort of what was part of the critique in the beginning of this whole situation when we passed it through our education committees. And apparently, there are those that think that it should have gone through judiciary as well. So I don't think it would be in our best interest, and we would be presuming a lot that we don't know because we are not the Judiciary Committee if we were to continue to take or listen to or even accept any amendments that are kind of out of our purview, out of our jurisdiction, and would only cause perhaps additional issues down the road.
Thank you. Roll call's been requested. Roll call granted.
Chair Swedzinski?
No.
Vice Chair McQuaid?
No.
Senator Coleman?
Aye.
Senator Abler?
Aye.
Senator Bolden?
No.
Senator Duckworth?
Yes.
Senator Hochschild?
No.
Senator Kunish,
No?
Senator Mann,
No.
Senator Weissenberg.
Yes.
The amendment fails on a 6 noes, 4 yeses vote. I'm going to ask members if you feel like I think it looks like 4 amendments left. If you feel like that perhaps it's a better bill in your heart and soul for the Judiciary Committee, we would appreciate if you kept that in mind, but in the spirit of bipartisanship, we will hear your bills until, it's time for us to leave. But in the spirit of, like I said, bipartisanship, continue with your amendments.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you. I'd like to offer the A5 amendment. And while that's being passed out, I would just say your comments are well taken. We did have a meeting before this, and there were other amendments for us to consider. And I myself said I don't think it necessarily falls under the purview of the Education Policy Committee. So we ruled those out, and we stuck with the ones that we thought were relevant. We are talking about school resource officers after all. We're talking about a model policy for them, and we are the Education Policy Committee. So they seem fairly relevant to me. And Senator Kunish's point is extremely well taken. One of the reasons we find ourselves in this situation is because the bill that passed last year only went through this committee. It did not go to the Senate Public Safety Committee. So you'll have to forgive us if we're being a little more cautious and ensuring that we utilize every opportunity we have to have amendments considered. Because last year, in our rush to pass the law, that committee was skipped, and it didn't have that opportunity. And had I been adhering to the restraint you now want to place upon me as it pertains to committee purview, we would have never had that discussion. So that being said, we do have just, I think, 3 more amendments to offer. I might not sound friendly right now, but they are friendly. They're very simple changes, and I would love to quickly go over the first one if you deem it appropriate now, Mr. Chair. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Senator, I'm sorry.
Thank you. All the A5 amendment does is delete the word June in a couple of spots and insert the word December to allow for school resource officers and police departments to have a little bit more time to appropriately train and ensure they are implementing the bill as you intend. Just gives them more time to plan, prepare, and train so that they can do right by our kids in schools. That's all it does. I would ask for a roll call, please.
Senator Westlin.
Mr. Chair, Senator Duckworth, we've had a lot of conversations about this, and in fact, conversations with stakeholders, DPS, the Post Board. It is important that these policies be enacted sooner rather than later. In fact, you've heard testimony today from a number of individuals who are concerned that it's taking as long as it is. However, the amount of time that has been allocated in this bill is sufficient time to bring on additional FTEs for the School Resource Center to train SROs as necessary. We know that a lot of the SROs actually have some SRO training already, including in my jurisdiction. I believe they have both the basic and the advanced training in NASRO. We allow for an additional length of time for those individuals who have had some training already. This is an adequate amount of time, and I would oppose extending that beyond what is in this bill. That, again, has been based on a lot of conversations with a lot of people, and so if we were in court, I would maintain my standing objection that this falls outside the jurisdiction of this committee.
Thank you, Senator Westlin. Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for the record, I guess, or maybe for everyone on the committee, the way that committee jurisdictions are broken up is by statute. So the statute numbers, this committee has certain sections of statute that we deal in, 121A, 121B, blah, blah, blah. 609 is a criminal statute. That is the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. Sometimes, if it's cross-referenced, it can be both. And so to your earlier comment, Senator Duckworth, you would have been able and had every opportunity, both in this committee and on the floor and in conference committee, to offer amendments to the statute that we had before, which was in 121A.58. You had every opportunity, and every member of this committee had that opportunity. Now, this amendment is dealing with the sections of the bill that are not within the jurisdiction of this committee. We can keep doing this, but I think the point of having a committee is that you do the work that is assigned to the committee. It's not about the topic, it's about the statutes under which they deal with. And this is firmly outside of our jurisdiction.
Thank you, Senator. Seeing no further comments, roll call was asked for, roll call granted.
Chair Swedzinski?
Nope.
Vice Chair Mayquade?
No.
Senator Coleman?
Aye.
Senator Abler?
I like December.
Senator Bolden?
No.
Senator Duckworth?
Yes.
Senator Hauschildt?
No.
Senator Kunish?
No?
Senator Mann?
No.
Senator Weisenberg?
Yes.
6 yeses, 4 nos, the amendment fails.
You
Mr.
have
Chair.
that backwards. You have that backwards, Mr. Chair.
Backwards, 6 nos, 4 yeses. Yeah, of course you do. The amendment fails.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you. I'd like to offer the A6 and request a roll call.
Senator Westlin, do you have a copy?
I do.
Senator Duckworth?
Thank you.
What your reasons for the amendment?
I appreciate it, Mr. Chair. Thank you. It's my understanding that this amendment very closely resembles, if not exactly resembles, the amendment that was added in the House the House Public Safety Committee last evening. It simply adds the Minnesota School Resource Officers Association to the group that will be consulting on the school resource officer model policy, which will be implemented throughout schools all across Minnesota. As the Education Committee, I think that's fairly relevant. And also, I could be mistaken, but the last time I checked, I was fairly certain that an amendment, regardless of committee jurisdiction or regardless of its relevance or germaneness to a specific committee, could still be adopted and added to a bill. That's all we're seeking to do here. It's a very friendly amendment. Pretty sure it was accepted in the House yesterday evening. We're just trying to help you along in the process and get this thing ready so we can vote for it. Thank you. And I request a roll call.
Senator Westlin.
Senator Swedzinski and Mr. Chair, Senator Duckworth, please vote no.
Roll call's been asked for. Roll call granted. All.
Chair Swedzinski?
No.
Vice Chair Mayquade?
No.
Senator Coleman?
Aye.
Senator Abler?
Aye.
Senator Bolden?
No.
Senator Duckworth?
Yes.
Senator Hauschildt?
No.
Senator Kunish?
No?
Senator Mann?
No.
Senator Weisenberg?
Yes.
Having 6 noes and 4 yeses, the A6 amendment fails. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions that may or may not lead to an amendment request. Senator Westlin, thank you so much for bringing forth this issue. I think I, like everyone at this table, wants to see a good version of this bill move forward. I do have a clarifying question. We did have a testifier and also a letter from the School Board Association, the Association of School Administrators, and so on, that are looking for someone to please share with them the statutory authority that supports that property damage is included in here. Can you tell me where that is in the bill?
I can. It's
Senator-
not in the, I'm sorry, Mr.
Senator
Chair.
Westlin.
Senator Coleman, I was so excited to answer that question.
Your enthusiasm is infectious.
I have all of these statutory references sort of committed to memory at this point. It's not in the bill. It's actually in 609.06. It's existing law, 609.06 subdivision 1, subsection 4. Authorized use of force when used by any person in lawful possession of real or personal property or by another assisting the person in lawful possession. And so we have had that conversation with our education partners who raised that, and under existing use of force authorization under 609.06, that is permitted.
Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Westlin, can you walk me through then line 5.4, kind of the rationale for taking that part out?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Westlin.
Senator Coleman, I think, so one of the challenges that we have, I think when we are reading statutes in conjunction with one another, I think we want them to be as clear as possible. This is already, so this is a different subdivision. This is 609.379. Again, this is a part of the criminal section that falls under the jurisdiction of a different committee, but when we start duplicating things in different sections of the statutes, it becomes less clear rather than more clear. And part of what the reasonable use of force was getting to is that particular section you're referring to, 5.1 to 5.5, actually makes it consistent with 121A.582, which does not reference property damage. And so we wanted those pieces need to be consistent with one another. And then in 609.06 subdivision 1 subsection 4, it deals with the property. So the part that you're referencing here is now consistent with 121A.582, which does not permit for property damage.
Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Westlin. So I think what we're seeing here again is there needs to be more clarification so that we don't end up right back where we started. In my district, because of what we passed last year, our school got put on lockdown because of a student that was disruptive, breaking property, and the SRO was unable to do anything until they were physically assaulted. And so I would like to offer the A9 amendment, Mr. Chair, and request a roll call.
And as soon as Senator Westlin has the bill, would you
Maybe, Mr.
explain
Chair,
it?
if I could request our researcher help walk us through, I think this is a little more clarification than addressing the Section 5 language. Kind of walk everyone through how that's going to, if that's okay. Mr. Chair, would that be all right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. He's better at the legalese than I am.
Yeah, it's okay. Let her. Senator Mayquade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And before we get through that, one thing I just want to clarify that I heard loud and clear Senator Westlin, but I just want to make sure that it was really clear to everybody else. Senator Coleman, the part that you're talking about, the self-injury, injury to another person or property, if you look at 5.7, it says nothing in this section limits any other authorization to use reasonable force, including but not limited to authorizations under, and then it lists 609.06 subdivision 1. That is the criminal statute that all law enforcement officers and all other Minnesotans, to be quite honest with you, have the authority to use reasonable force in various situations. That is the section that that everybody should be looking to understand when they can use reasonable force. That includes destruction of property, threat of harm, doing an arrest, all of those things. That's 609.06 subdivision 1 and then subpart 4 that Senator Westlin was talking about. So what she's talking about is that they reference 609.06 subdivision 1 here so that it enumerates all of the things that already exist in the criminal code for law enforcement officers and everybody else, instead of trying to articulate what it is and isn't in the education statute. It is already listed in the criminal code, 609.06 subdivision 1. That's what I think you're looking for.
And I just want to remind members that we probably have to be out of here in about 20 minutes, and if
10.
10 to 20 minutes, and if we're still here, we'll have to come back tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just have our researcher walk us through the
Okay.
amendment, please.
Let's try to pick up the pace as much as possible.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Ed Cook, I'm a researcher with the Senate Republican Caucus. If I understood Senator Westlin, she was referring to paragraph 4 under 609.06 subdivision 1. And you can find that in your bill on lines 4.6 through 4.8, if you want to look at it. I think that's what, if I have it correct. I don't think this is getting at the issue Senator Coleman is, because this is more if it's your personal property and someone was attempting to take it from you, like your cell phone or something like that, you would have the right to use reasonable force to resist. What Senator Coleman is getting at is a student who's vandalizing the school, spray painting the walls or tipping over expensive AV equipment, breaking windows. That would be a problem, we believe, for the school people, and I think the school people were referencing that earlier, because if you look at paragraph 7, which is where teachers and school principals would now be placed, the only time they can exercise lawful authority is to restrain a child or pupil to prevent bodily harm or death to the child, pupil, or another. So it would not cover property. And that's what Senator Coleman's amendment is trying to say. You could use reasonable force to restrain or correct a child, or to prevent bodily harm or death to the child or another.
Do you have a?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We, again, have had a number of conversations about this particular issue. And other nonpartisan and partisan staff that have provided a different interpretation of 609.06, which, again, I believe falls more squarely under the expertise and jurisdiction of the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. However, I have asked Mr. Uni to come also and supplement my comments, but in essence, I'm asking that members vote no on this amendment, but would ask Mr. Uni to elaborate.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Senator McQuaid, before you. Okay.
Before I would. Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Uni, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. I just want to really be very clear that the subpart 7, that was implied that teachers and principals and school employees can only exercise lawful authority to prevent bodily harm or death. Right above that, there's also the clause that says when used in the for a lawful custodian of a child in the exercise of lawful authority to restrain or correct such a child. So that is still the law. And I don't want people to just read some parts and not the entirety of the law.
Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Chair, members, for the record, my name is Adosh Uni. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Minnesota Department of Education. And to just go to the sections that you all were discussing between clauses 6 and 7. Clause 6 provides authority for parents, guardians, or lawful custodians under this bill, whereas Clause 7 provides the authority for teachers, school principal, employees, or agents of the district. And the retention of "or correct," when we were looking at the correct language, was that in the education setting, that is a term or practice that is outdated. It's around correcting behavior in the opinion of the educator that might not be appropriate. That is a practice that is, it is in terms of the lens of reasonable force, is not an appropriate place for an educator. to engage in the use of reasonable force. And that's in line with the purpose of the bill, which is to limit it to the use of reasonable force for restraining a child to prevent bodily harm or death. The language was retained in the context of a parent or guardian or custodian, as that's outside of the educational context, and there are situations where that language is more appropriate. But that's why there's a difference between why correct exists for parents, guardians, and custodians. It doesn't exist for teachers and other school personnel in this bill. That would also apply where this bill, that would also apply below in the other, it's consistent with Section 8, where correct also remains for parent, legal guardian, or caretaker of a child, and teacher is struck from that section as well.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Uni, perhaps you can clarify this. The term to correct has a particular meaning, right? Doesn't the term to correct a child have a particular meaning that is outdated or refers to the ability to engage in certain conduct?
Mr. Chair, committee members, I think I glossed over that very quickly. Yes, to correct is around modifying the student's behavior specifically, and doesn't really have a place to play in the educational setting for educators. That it's more about modifying behavior.
Well, we're going to be leaving in 10 minutes, so just FYI to everybody.
Right, okay. My understanding, Mr. Chair, is that the term correct is an outdated term. My understanding, if I recall from the many conversations we had, is that often it's in reference specifically to corporal punishment. And in any event, I oppose the bill. Please vote no, or the amendment.
Okay, roll call has been asked for. Roll call granted. A9 amendment.
Chair Swedzinski,
No.
Vice Chair Mayquade,
No.
Senator Holman,
Yes.
Senator Abler,
Yes.
Senator Bolden,
No.
Senator Duckworth,
Yes.
Senator Hauschildt,
No.
Senator Kunish,
No?
Senator Mann,
No.
Senator Wiesenberg.
Yes.
Six noes, 4 yeses, the amendment fails.
Mr. Chair,
Are these, yes, Senator Abler?
I don't have an amendment. I just want to offer a short thought and move toward closing comments.
Yeah,
Is that
let's
where you want to
do that. That's a great idea, Senator.
be? I'm here to
Abler.
help, Mr. Chair. It's Valentine's, and I don't want to spend Valentine's evening with you either, so if that's okay.
Well, the feeling might not be mutual, but let's
Might
go.
have been nice if you had cookies. Senator Westlin, thanks for working on this. There's actually evidence from input, just not enough yet. And I think that the concerns of the people who fear overuse of force have been listened to, and I appreciate their comments as well. I think they're protected in this bill pretty well, and so the concerns they express, I think, are just, I think they're protected pretty well, and so I think you're onto something. The bill has to bring all the officers back to schools. And the respectful amendments we brought, except the whole undoing of the thing, which I appreciate you didn't want that one. But keep listening. And because some of those groups don't feel like they're being listened to. They feel like they have not been listened to, which is why I brought my amendment, because they're very insecure about some of that. And in the precarious place a lot of these law enforcement people find themselves, being judged by other people who have done things that they should not have done. And in their own forces, they're exemplary and impeccable. You want them back protecting us, because we need them. The schools need them, the students need them, the teachers need them, the families want to feel safe. And so I will help you along that way. I'm sorry I can't support this bill today, because it's not going to work. So thank you. That was short, right?
Senator Kunish.
Yeah, I think we really need some clarification, and so I have a question for the senator, if that's all right, the author. Okay. So it's my understanding that there's no blanket ban on the use of prone restraints for SROs present in our statute. Is that correct, Senator Westlin?
That is correct, and I do believe that occasionally some terms are being used interchangeably between 125A.0942 deals with our students receiving special education services. We have 121A.58, we have 128.582. All of these, and 609, these all sort of work together. And if there is interest, I know that we have Department of Education folks here who could certainly talk and clarify this, but you are correct that there is currently not a blanket ban on prone restraints. The statute is clear on that. The Attorney General's opinion clarified that 60906 applied to our law enforcement officers. And again, if the Department of Education is here, could talk maybe very briefly about the interplay of the different statutes, but I do think that is important to understand. We are not repealing or reversing anything by bringing this bill. And in fact, in my opinion, we are creating guardrails that do not currently exist. And from my perspective, this is the way to ensure that everyone in the schools has the proper training, has the ability to learn about how to interact with kids in a school setting in particular, which in my view is appreciably different than a law enforcement, member of the law enforcement in the general community.
Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there were a couple people that were on the list before me. If they want to go ahead, I don't want to jump.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate your indulgence. I know we're running low on time, so your cue to pick up the pace is noted, although I will say I did make that mistake last time. Last time when the bill that became law was before us in this committee, we were running low on time, and rather than asking questions, I simply made a statement, and the statement was, well, we should probably run this language past law enforcement, school resource officers, and school districts. And my hope was that the folks here representing the governor that were here with the Minnesota Department of Education would have done that, and it would have gone through the appropriate committee procedure so we could have got that feedback. I'm not going to continue to rehash the past, but I will say sometimes, and why I appreciate you giving us the time, Mr. Chair, is we don't want to shortchange the process for a very good reason. Everybody in this room, without question, without a doubt, wants to keep kids safe. They want to keep teachers safe. They want to keep schools safe. We have universal agreement on that. That is not a Republican stance. It's not a Democrat stance. It's a bipartisan, unified, universal truth that we want to keep kids safe. What I think is at hand in this discussion is what's reasonable. What is reasonable when we're talking about in the most outrageous and unimaginable and dangerous situations? We're talking about the health, safety, and welfare of kids and teachers in schools. What's reasonable? What are we going to allow teachers to do, school staff to do? What are we going to allow school resource officers to do to prevent, deter people from being harmed and to keep them safe? And we talk a lot about law enforcement. It's not just coming from them. This is not just a concern from law enforcement. They've come forward about it. County sheriffs have come forward about it. County governments have come forward. City governments, school districts, parents, kids. There's a lot of folks out there that have requested that we make a change to the law that was passed last year. I appreciate the effort that's being made here today, but I don't think it quite meets the threshold of what they're looking for. And, you know, we can make it very simple. Very simple. Listen to the kids. listen to the kids. It was a survey conducted by the Minnesota Department of Education in 2022, before this issue was in the news, before it became politicized, before there were some confusing narratives surrounding the issue. And here are the highlights of the results of that survey. 94% of Minnesota students, the kids we all say we should be listening to on this issue, 94% said it was a good idea to have SROs or police at our school. 71% said we would tell an SRO or police officer about an unsafe or illegal activity. And 61% said they were comfortable going to an SRO or police officer at schools if having problems or needing help. If all of these dangerous, unreasonable things were happening and harming kids and negatively impacting them in our schools, why in the world would a survey bring us those results? That's the question at hand. So if we wanted to make this real simple and strip away all the political aspects about this bill and make it about a safe learning environment for our children, it would be pretty easy. There were a few students last night that testified in the House Public Safety Committee that said the same thing. I'm not going to rehash everything they said, but you should listen to the hearing if you want to hear it straight from the mouth of kids. Hennepin County, they had to pull some school resource officers. They're not back. 911 calls to schools have increased 53%. We've got state troopers here today. They're present. You might not see them, but they're in this room. They're here to keep us safe. They're here that if something were to happen, they could intervene. They could deter, they could prevent harm. If we've got them up here in the Senate building, the House office building, the state capitol to keep all of us safe, how in the world could we be comfortable with them being removed from schools? It's a failure for us not to act to get them back in the school buildings where they were previously if they have since been removed. That's the kind of bill we need. That's the kind of urgency that we need. I'm almost done, Mr. Chair. You know, I represent the city of Lakeville. It's my hometown. It's where I went to high school. I was the school board chair of that school district for a time. And you may or may not have seen a video that went viral just a couple of weeks ago about a very violent altercation that took place in the very high school I graduated from. And if you watch that video, there's a woman who's trying to intervene. I don't know if she's a teacher or a staff member at that school. But there are students fighting on the ground. There's a crowd. People have their cameras out. And she's trying to help. And she looks to the crowd at one point and she says, "Please help me." That's somebody's wife. That's somebody's mom. It's somebody's grandmother. And she symbolizes all the teachers across the state of Minnesota that are asking us for help when it comes to clarifying the law, keeping kids safe, keeping teachers safe, school staff safe, and communities safe. And I want to let that woman know, and other teachers know, that we hear you, but we must also listen. Passing a law that truly fixes this is what we need. I don't believe this bill does so. But Senator Westlin, I pray the version that we do hopefully see and get a chance to vote on and pass does. Thank you.
Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I pride myself on being one of the shortest-winded members of the Senate, and I will not let you down today. But I will say I've seen this story play out before. Law enforcement officers not in agreement with the bill, a lack of clarification, Republicans shut out of the debate, and I want to ask the senators at this table how that worked out for you last time. I've seen this play out before, and I am terrified for what's going to happen, because how it played out in my district, Mr. Chair, is our students cowering in their classroom for 45 minutes as their SRO had to wait to get physically assaulted before they could do anything. And if this bill does not get improved on its way to the floor, I think that we're going to be right back where we started and right here again, taking up committee time on this same issue next year. But how many students will get hurt and how many law enforcement officers or teachers will get hurt in the meantime is a tragic answer we will have to wait to find out. And so I urge that Republicans do not get shut out of all the debates again this year. because we might know what we're talking about. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and good luck, Senator Westlin.
Senator Kunesh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I renew my motion to move this bill to judiciary.
Senator McQuaid.
Oh.
We have a few more people that want to speak.
I'll go very fast. The thing I want to say to you, Senator Westlin, is thank you for doing this work, because the bill that was passed through this committee and off the floor and off the House floor and then the conference committee and passed again, the language that involved not allowing adults in schools to use prone restraints has been introduced every year since 2021, both in this chamber and in the House. It's the result of the work of the Restrictive Procedures Work Group that has been meeting for the 10 years since we introduced the same language in the special education statute. What I don't appreciate about this conversation that's been happening here today is that setting standards for how adults treat children in school is somehow making kids unsafe, because it's not. The willful misinterpretation of law has done that, and I'm really hoping that we can get this clarification, because what was uplifted through that confusion is that there weren't any standards. And so this bill is not a response to what happened before, because we just set uniform standards for how adults treat children in schools. They can't restrict their ability to breathe or communicate distress and use prone restraints, which has killed children in schools. Uniform set of standards for all adults in schools. I think that's a pretty good deal. This actually sets the model policy for how all SROs are going to be acting in schools and their duties and how they're going to interact with school boards. I want to be very clear that none of this bill was about saying that we don't want SROs in school. None of it was about saying that they shouldn't be in school, or that the 25% of students who answered the student survey, the 71% of the students of the 25% that answered the student survey like their SRO. It wasn't about not liking them. It was a uniform set of standards for how adults in schools treat children. And so we hope to continue to move this bill forward, and I thank you, Senator Westlin, for all of the work, because that is what the point of this was, and it was to ensure that the students are safe with adults in schools and nothing more.
Before you have your closing remarks, I just want to thank all the testifiers today and all the letters and input that we've heard and read. I have not in my 8 years in the Senate had such an edifying and intellectually stimulating Commissioner of Education. Jet said the last month, it's been 5 months. Just not to correct you, and it's been very, like I said, intellectually stimulating. I had no idea there were this many different varying definitions of imminent and reasonable and restraint and shall versus must and or and to until this bill came forward. And you know, the Constitutional Convention was all about a bundle of compromises, and some of them didn't stand the test of time, and some of them have stood the test of time. And I appreciate all my members on the other side of the aisle for their opinions on this. I'm hoping that maybe history will judge that Senator Westlin and Representative Frazier, that you were right. And your tireless work on this bill, along with Representative Frazier, has been nothing but an inspiration to me, and I can never thank you enough. And so with that said, closing arguments before the roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I will also try to be brief. And remember, I'm not in a court of law arguing to the court. I would like to reiterate my deep thanks for the many, many, many conversations that have been had over the past months. And I think first and foremost, I would love to lift up our staff. I think we often remember them last, and I always try to remember them first. We have the best nonpartisan and partisan staff in both bodies. We have worked with staff from the governor's office, all of whom are deeply passionate and incredibly intelligent individuals who come here, probably could get paid better in the private sector, but who are devoted to this work. And we have relied on them and their smarts and their passion. I just want to correct one thing. This isn't about me being right. And I understand what you were saying, but this isn't about me being right. This is about all of the people who have worked and touched this work, really deeply listening to everybody who came to us with their feedback and their suggestions, and from that work, crafting a bill that I actually believe is a good piece of work. In my short time here in the legislature, I will say that I'm incredibly proud of this work, and I'm incredibly proud to be the chief author of this bill. I do want to say that nobody is being shut out of a debate. We are having a very robust debate. We will go through the regular committee process. We'll go through this again in Judiciary and Public Safety. Our colleagues in the other body are going through a similar process, and so nobody is being shut out of this debate. I do want to touch on briefly, too, that one of the pieces that we passed last year that is going to be so important going forward, we've heard comments multiple times this afternoon about how often does this really happen. The thing is, we don't know, because up until this point, we haven't had a reporting requirement. We are going to be getting information about what is actually happening in our schools, how often use of force is being used with our students, who is doing it, teachers, SROs, et cetera, and it will provide detailed information for us to know exactly what's going on in our schools. And I do want to say once again, as I wrap up, Mr. Chair, that the fact that some of us have not had certain experiences, I think it's so important that we don't discount individuals who have had experiences. And we've heard some very moving testimony in the other body and committee, and we've heard moving testimony here. And I do want all of those individuals to know that I care deeply about their words and their experiences. And again, I believe that moving this bill forward will actually be a good thing to provide for a supportive and a safe learning environment for all of our students. I am asking members of this committee to vote yes on this bill, and that we will then move forward to public safety, and eventually this will hit the floor, and I, again, will ask for your support at that time. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members.
Thank you, Senator. Roll call vote.
Chair Swedzinski,
Yes.
Vice Chair McQuaid,
Aye.
Senator Coleman,
No.
Senator Abler,
Hopefully, yes, someday, but not today.
Senator Bolden,
Aye.
Senator Duckworth,
No.
Senator Haustraud,
Yes.
Senator Kunish,
Yes.
Senator Mann, Senator Wiesenberg,
No.
Senator Mann,
Senator Westlin, the bill passes 5-4. Congratulations as you head to public safety.
Thank you for your time today. I really do appreciate the conversation.
Members, our next meeting is Monday. It's a Student Voices Day. Reach out to young people in your district if they're interested in testifying on what's going on in their school or what's going on in their life. We'd love to hear from you and them.